So, this edition of Saturday Night Dynamite kicked off with another match in the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament. And this one was between Bryan Danielson and Dustin Rhodes. And this was a pretty competitive match. And to be honest, that's pretty surprising considering the age of these two guys. I mean, Bryan Danielson going as hard as he's going right now at the age of 40 is pretty impressive. But the fact that Dustin Rhodes is as good as he is past the age of 50 is honestly pretty insane. Like, this guy was wrestling for WCW and WWE back in the 90s, and the fact that he's still going in the 2020s shows just how well he's taking care of himself over the past few decades and how good he is. Anyways, towards the end of the match, Danielson tried to go for a running knee, but Dustin countered with a lariat, and then he hit a pile driver on Bryan, which genuinely made me nervous because anytime I see Bryan take a move to his neck, I automatically get nervous just based on his past injuries. And you could see it too. I mean, he was holding the back of his neck after the match, but obviously Bryan Danielson wasn't going to lose. I mean, he's probably going to be making it all the way to the finals, just given the fact that he's one of the hottest stars in AEW right now since he just debuted. But Bryan Danielson made Dustin Rhodes pass out with a guillotine, and he advanced in the tournament. And then AEW World Champion Kenny Omega was backstage with the rest of the Elite, and he basically just talked some smack to Hangman Adam Page to build up for their match at Full Gear. And then Tony Schiavone interviewed Sting in the ring to get an update on Darby Allin, but before Sting could give an update, MJF came out and he started talking shit to Sting. And one of the things that I've always loved about MJF is that there's no line that's too far for him to cross. So he brought up Sting's old friend Lex Luger and said that Darby Allin would wind up in the same place as him, which is in a wheelchair. And then Sting finally was provoked enough and attacked MJF, but then MJF's Pinnacle members Wardlow and Shawn Spears came in to help MJF and beat Sting down. And with Sting incapacitated, MJF basically held him and taunted Darby before ending the segment by bashing Sting across the head with his Dynamite Diamond ring. And then Tony Schiavone interviewed AEW Women's World Champion Britt Baker backstage, and she also talked smack to her Full Gear opponent Ty Conti. And then we had round one of the TBS Women's Championship Tournament. That title name is still going to take some getting used to. The TBS Women's Champ, it just doesn't sound as badass as the TNT title. Anyways, this first round matchup was between Ruby Soho and Penelope Ford, and I actually like how they kind of incorporate the rivalries that are already going into this tournament. But in the end, the bunny would try to come down and help Ford beat Ruby, and she tried to give Ford her brass knucks, but the refs saw them and got him out of the ring, and then Ruby Soho rolled up Penelope for the win and advanced in the tournament. And then after the match, the bunny and Penelope Ford cornered Ruby, but Red Velvet came out to Ruby's aid and helped Ruby fend off the bunny and Penelope Ford. And then Wardlow asked MJF about why MJF shoved him into Sting last week, and MJF basically responded by giving him Shawn Spears as a tag partner. And then Bobby Fish took on Anthony Green, and he finished the match with his signature roundhouse kick, which he now calls the Last Rites, and pinned him for the win. And then Bobby tried to continue the attack after the match, but CM Punk came out and caused Bobby Fish to retreat. So we're probably going to get CM Punk versus Bobby Fish soon, which is a match that I didn't even know I wanted until I saw it. And then Tony Schiavone was backstage with Dante Martin and Leo Rush again, and Leo basically set up a match with him and Dante against the team of the Seidel brothers. And then the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament continued with Lance Archer facing off against Eddie Kingston. And towards the end of the match, we saw this horrifying botch where Lance Archer tried to go for a moonsault, but he didn't complete the backflip entirely and landed on his head. And Archer tried to continue the match, but Kingston finished it up quick by rolling him up and advanced to the semifinals, which is honestly probably the best thing that could have been done after that botch, was just finish it up real quick. So hats off to Kingston for doing that, and I'm also hoping that Lance Archer is alright, because that was a pretty scary botch, the way he just landed on the top of his head. And then Dan Lambert and the Men of the Year came out to give the stipulations for the American Top Team versus Inner Circle match, but Sammy Guevara cut them off, and Dan Lambert proposed his challenge from the other week where Sammy Guevara has to put his TNT title on the line against Ethan Page next week on Dynamite, and if Sammy loses, he'll lose the championship and he'll also have to leave the Inner Circle, which Sammy Guevara accepted. And I can't imagine that Sammy's actually going to leave the Inner Circle, so I feel like Sammy's probably going to retain. But when Sammy Guevara accepted, he also laid out his condition where if he won, he would be able to name the 3 members of American Top Team that the Inner Circle gets to face. And the Men of the Year tried to double team Sammy before the title match next week, but Sammy Guevara's Inner Circle members came out to help him fend the Men of the Year off. And then Jungle Boy took on Brandon Cutler, and this was a really quick match where basically Cutler tried to go for Adam Cole's Panama Sunrise, but Jungle Boy just pushed Brandon Cutler off of him with a backdrop, and then he powerbombed Cutler in the middle of the ring and locked in the snare trap submission and made Cutler tap out. And Jungle Boy said he wasn't done after the match because that was such a short match, so he tried to get one of the Elite to come out to face him in a real match, and he locked Brandon Cutler in the snare trap again and tried to force one of them to come out. And finally, Adam Cole baby came out to save Brandon, and he seemingly accepted the challenge, but before he could get in the ring, it turned out to be a trap as the Young Bucks came up from behind Jungle Boy and hit him with stereo super kicks. And then the super click brought Jungle Boy to the top of the stage, and they beat Jungle Boy down with the BTE trigger and a last shot. And then to finish it off, the Bucks grabbed Jungle Boy and threw him off the stage, and Jungle Boy crashed through a table below. And then in the main event, we had Cody Rhodes versus Malakai Black 3. And to be honest, I don't really know why they're having this match, because when you have the 2 matches before and the same guy wins both times, I don't think there's really a point in a trilogy match. But yo, I gotta talk about this because before we got into this match, a lot of people, myself included, thought that Malakai Black should have no reason to lose this match, especially considering that he already beat Cody twice and he's on this absolute hot streak. So it would not make sense at all for this third match for Cody just to get a random win and end Black's undefeated streak. And I will say that I think they booked it pretty strong with both guys bleeding at the end of a war. But even so, the end was pretty screwy, and I also didn't agree with the result, because you had people like Brock Anderson and Lee Johnson and Arn Anderson and Andrade El Idolo and Pac come down to help their respective guys. And I understand why, because some of these guys go to Cody Rhodes' wrestling academy, and at the end of Rampage, there was the incident with Cody Rhodes coming out to help Pac fend off Malakai Black and Andrade El Idolo after Pac's match with Andrade. But if you know my track record with a lot of the matches in AEW, I just want a clean match. But after all those people went away, Black hit Cody with his spinning heel kick, and Cody kind of fell into the ropes and prevented Black from pinning him. And then a few seconds later, Cody just started going again, which I really don't like, because that spinning heel kick has kind of had like a knockout effect for its entire AEW run, and the fact that Cody was just able to sort of take it and just start charging back right afterwards is kind of bad. But either way, Cody finished the match with a Cody cutter, hit the crossroads, and then planted Black with a Tiger Driver 98 and pinned Black for the win. And I don't think anybody was happy with that. Like, I was thinking for a while who would be Black's first loss in AEW, and I really did not think it would be Cody. I mean, granted, when Brody Lee took on Cody Rhodes for the TNT Championship, I also didn't think that Cody Rhodes should be the one to take the TNT title off of Brody, which was also kind of dumb. And I'm kind of understanding now what people were saying when they said that being an executive vice president, Cody Rhodes is just booking himself over other wrestlers who may need wins more than he does. And if Cody thought that people were hating him before, I don't think it'll compare to what happens now. Kind of reminds me of another wrestler who management puts over despite the fans' protests. I mean, I really hated that ending. Like, I just didn't think it made any sense at all, because one, Cody should not have been the first guy to beat Malakai and give him his first loss. And two, it doesn't even make sense for him to beat him now in this trilogy match, considering Malakai has already won the past 2 matches. So I don't know. I mean, I saw people saying that Malakai Black was now buried because he now has this one loss on his record, and let's relax on that. I don't think he's necessarily ruined. I think it definitely destroys a bit of his mystique, but I still think he might be able to bounce back from this. But yeah, this ending was just not it. I'm honestly wishing that Cody Rhodes can just turn heel, because at this point, it just seems like the most logical choice. Kind of reminds me of that other wrestler who fans were booing and wanted to turn heel despite management insisting that he remain a babyface. Anyways, that was Dynamite, and we'll get another Dynamite on Wednesday night. So Dynamite is going back to Wednesday nights now, and that's sure to be a good show.